What if the most feared Titan in the multiverse stepped onto the bridge of the USS Enterprise, not as a conqueror, but as a prophet of balance? What if the man who wiped out half of all life with a snap of his fingers suddenly found himself in a universe that believed in diplomacy over domination, logic over chaos, hope over despair? Would the ideals of Starfleet break him, or would he break the Federation? And if Thanos looked upon a galaxy filled with warp drives, and seemingly limitless resources, would he still believe that half of all life must die? Or would he discover something far more terrifying, that this universe doesn't need the Infinity Stones to fall? Space, and the final frontier. The USS Enterprise D glides silently through a calm sector near the Romulan neutral zone. Stars shimmer like distant embers against the velvet black. On the bridge, Captain Jean-Luc Picard stands tall, hands clasped behind his back. "Status report," Picard says evenly. "Long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly, Captain," Data replies. "It does not match any known stellar phenomenon." Before the question can form on Picard's lips, the view screen fractures with violet energy. Space folds inward, not like a wormhole, not like subspace distortion. It tears a violent, geometric rupture blooms in the void. Crew members stumble as consoles spark. "What in God's name?" Riker mutters. From the wound in space, a single figure drifts outward, suspended in cosmic energy, massive, armored in gold and obsidian, skin the color of dusk. Thanos. But this Thanos does not wear the Infinity Gauntlet. He opens his eyes slowly, surveying the stars' unfamiliar constellations, alien configurations. His voice echoes through vacuum, yet somehow reaches the bridge. "This is not my universe." Red alert, klaxons blare, phasers lock, photon torpedoes arm, and yet Thanos does not attack. Instead he looks curious. Moments earlier, in a universe far removed, Thanos had stood upon the ruins of a shattered battlefield. The Infinity Stones had been destroyed, the Avengers scattered, the cosmos unbalanced in new, unpredictable ways. But something went wrong when the stones were reduced to atoms. Their energy did not dissipate it. Ruptured. He remembers the flash, the silence, then nothing. Now he floats in a universe humming with different physics. No cosmic stones tug at his awareness. No omnipotent artifacts whisper from across reality. Only stars, ordered, stable, abundant. He senses life everywhere. Too much life. A Federation starship approaches cautiously. Its weapon systems hum, but do not fire. On the bridge, Picard straightens. Open hailing frequencies. Static crackles. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Identify yourself." Thanos tilts his head slightly. A flicker of intrigue crosses his face. "I am Thanos of Titan. And this universe, it thrives in excess." Data's fingers move rapidly across his console. "Captain, scans indicate the being possesses extreme durability and energy output far beyond conventional humanoid parameters." Understatement of the century. Riker murmurs. Picard steps closer to the view screen. "You appear far from home, Mr. Thanos. This is Federation space. We seek peaceful resolution." Thanos almost smiles. "Peaceful resolution," he repeats. "In my universe, peace required sacrifice." The word sacrifice lands heavily on the bridge. WORF rises from tactical. "Captain, I recommend we fire." Picard raises a hand. "Not yet." Thanos drifts closer to the Enterprise, studying it. His mind calculates instinctively warp capabilities, matter replication technology, subspace communication. A civilization that has harnessed abundance without collapse, or so it seems. "Tell me, Captain," Thanos says, his voice now transmitted clearly through subspace frequencies, "has your galaxy solved hunger, war, overpopulation?" Picard hesitates. "We strive for a society where want is eliminated. We have no need for currency. We seek knowledge and cooperation." Thanos' eyes narrow. "No need for currency," he repeats thoughtfully. "Replication of matter, energy, converted to sustenance. You have achieved what my people could not." For a fleeting moment, something almost like regret flickers in him. Then his expression hardens. "And yet, you still have enemies. The Romulans, the Borg, the Dominion lurking beyond your understanding. Your utopia stands atop a knife's edge." The bridge falls silent. He is not wrong. Suddenly a surge of subspace energy ripples outward from Thanos' body. The anomaly that brought him here destabilizes further. Sensors across the Enterprise spike into the red. Captain, data warns, the rupture is expanding. If it collapses, it could destabilize this entire sector. Picard's jaw tightens. Mr. Thanos, whatever brought you here is threatening millions of lives. Thanos looks toward the widening tear in space. For the first time, he murmurs, almost to himself, I am not the cause of imbalance. I am the symptom. And then he does something no one expects. He raises his hand, empty of stones, and reaches into the anomaly. Energy lashes across his armor, tearing into him. The bridge crew watches in stunned silence as the Titan absorbs the rupture's power, stabilizing it through sheer will. Why would he save a universe he does not know? The tear contracts, shrinks, and finally seals, leaving only faint residual radiation. Thanos drifts, smoke rising from his armor. The Enterprise remains intact. Picard exhales slowly, lowers shields. Worf stares in disbelief. He protected. Thanos' gaze returns to the ship. I will need answers, he says calmly. And you, Captain, will need me. In the distance, unnoticed by the crew, a faint green glow flickers in subspace. Not an infinity stone. Something else. Something ancient. Something that has just felt Thanos' arrival. And it is awakening. What if the Federation's greatest nightmare wasn't invasion, but inspiration? What if Thanos did not come to conquer Starfleet, but to study it, to understand how this galaxy dared to flourish without slaughter? And what if, in trying to prove him wrong, the Federation accidentally proved him right? Would their ideals withstand the scrutiny of a being who had destroyed half a universe in the name of balance? Or would his presence begin to expose cracks they never knew existed? The brig doors slide open with a mechanical hiss. Thanos does. Knots resist as security escorts him through the corridors of the USS Enterprise D. Crew members pause at their stations, whispering. Some stare in fear, others in disbelief. The Titan's footsteps echo heavily against the metallic deck plating, each step deliberate, controlled. He observes everything, the lighting, the architecture, the lack of visible poverty, hunger, or desperation. A civilization that seems to have transcended scarcity. Inside the observation lounge, Captain Jean-Luc Picard stands by the viewport, Earth glowing faintly in the distance. Commander Riker, Lieutenant Commander Data, and Counselor Deanna Troi remain seated, tension thick. In the air, the doors open. Thanos enters. For a moment, silence reigns. Picard gestures calmly. Please, sit. The chair creaks under Thanos' immense weight, but holds. Troi closes her eyes briefly, sensing her expression tightens. He believes what he did was mercy. She whispers softly to Picard. Thanos' eyes flicker toward her. I do not hide from my convictions. Picard folds his hands on the table. You claimed our galaxy thrives in excess. You implied collapse is inevitable. On what basis? Thanos leans forward slightly. In my universe, he begins, resources dwindled, populations multiplied without restraint. My world Titan was proof. I offered salvation through sacrifice. They rejected me. Titan died. His voice is steady, but beneath it lies something colder than rage. Certainty. I succeeded elsewhere. He continues. Half of all life, random, fair, impartial. Riker clenches his jaw. You call genocide fair? I call it balance. Dato interjects, voice calm. Statistical models within Federation territory indicate sustainable population growth. Replicator technology mitigates scarcity. Your premise may not apply here. Thanos studies him with interest. An artificial being advocating logic. Fascinating. Picard steps in firmly. We do not accept mass death as a solution. We adapt. We cooperate. We innovate. Thanos stands abruptly, pacing toward the viewport. You believe technology makes you immune to collapse, he says. Quietly, replicators conjure food from energy. Warp drives expand your reach, but energy itself is finite. Entropy waits patiently. His massive hand touches the glass. You fight the Borg, a species that consumes civilizations to survive. You feared them because, deep down, you recognize yourselves. Expansion without end. The room stiffens. Troi inhales sharply. He's not here to destroy us. He's here to test us. Suddenly, an alarm pierces the ship. Bridge to Captain Picard. Worf's voice cuts through. Multiple vessels decloaking near the neutral zone. Romulan but Picard's eyes narrow. On screen, the viewport shifts to Tactical Display 3. Did Eridix-class warbirds surrounding the Enterprise. A cold Romulan voice transmits across frequencies. This is Commander Tyrrell of the Romulan Star Empire. You harbor a being of extraordinary power. He is not yours to keep. Thanos' gaze sharpens. They sensed me, he murmurs. Interesting. Riker turns to Picard. They want him as a weapon. Picard's voice is steel. We do not trade lives. The Romulan commander continues. Surrender the Titan, or we will consider this an act of aggression. Thanos steps forward, amusement flickering across his face. You see, Captain, your galaxy's no different. Power invites fear. Fear invites conflict. Phases power up. Warbirds charge. DIS, RUPTORS. The Enterprise braces for battle. But before Picard can issue orders, Thanos speaks calmly. Allow me. Security moves to stop him, but he is already gone. In a blur of violet energy, Thanos vanishes from the observation lounge. Seconds later, he appears in open space between the Romulan ships, without the Infinity Gauntlet, without stones. And yet, the vacuum bends around him. The Romulans open fire. Green disruptor beams strike him directly, exploding against his armor in brilliant bursts of light. When the smoke clears, he remains standing, unmoved. He extends one hand. Space compresses. The nearest warboard shudders violently as its singularity core destabilizes. Not destroyed, merely suspended in stasis. Thanos turns slowly toward the second. Vesserville, your empire thrives on secrecy. He transmits directly into their systems. A manipulation, unbalanced through fear. He clenches his fist. The second warbird's weapon systems shut down simultaneously. On the Enterprise bridge, Worf stares in disbelief. He disables them without effort. Picard watches grimly. He's proving a point. The third warbird attempts retreat, cloaking mid-warp. Thanos closes his eyes. For a fraction of a second, subspace ripples, that faint green glow from earlier pulsing brighter somewhere beyond sensors, and then the cloaked warbird reappears violently. Forced back into normal space, Thanos does not destroy them. He merely leaves them, powerless, floating, helpless. He returns to the Enterprise bridge in a flash of light. I have demonstrated restraint, he says, evenly. Something your enemies will not. The Romulans retreat. Systems barely functional. Silence fills the bridge. Picard studies Thanos carefully. You could have annihilated them. Yes, why didn't you? Thanos turns toward the stars beyond the viewport. Because annihilation is inefficient. Those words hang like a blade. Dado steps forward. Captain long-range sensors detect a surge in subspace energy. Origin unknown it is. Reacting to Thanos' actions. The green glow intensifies somewhere deep in uncharted space. Troy's voice trembles slightly. Whatever that is, it's aware of him. Thanos' expression shifts for the first time. Not anger. Not confidence. Recognition. I am not the only force seeking balance, he murmurs. The lights flicker. Across the galaxy, Borg cubes. Alter-course Romulan intelligence flags, emergency priority signals. And deep within the Gamma Quadrant something ancient stirs in the wormhole. Not because Thanos attacked, but because he didn't. Because the balance has shifted simply by his presence. Picard looks at the Titan. He said we would need you. Thanos nods once. You will. Outside, space itself begins to tremble, not from war, but from awakening. And for the first time since arriving in this universe, Thanos smiles. What if the Borg did not see Thanos as prey, but as perfection? What if the collective, a hive mind obsessed with biological and technological superiority, encountered a being who had already conquered death, wielded cosmic forces, and bent reality to his will? Would they attempt to assimilate him, or would they seek to become him? And if the Borg adapted to Thanos, what would that mean for a galaxy already struggling to survive their relentless hunger? The stars outside the Enterprise stretch into warp as Picard orders a course toward the last detected subspace surge. The green energy pulse continues to echo through long-range sensors like a heartbeat rippling across space-time on the bridge. Tension simmers. Captain, data reports. Multiple Borg vessels have altered their trajectories. Their convergence point aligns without destination. Riker exhales sharply. Of course it does. Thanos stands silently near the aft station, observing the bridge crew with analytical calm. He seems almost contemplative. The Borg, he says quietly. A collective consciousness that consumes individuality in pursuit of efficiency. Worf growls. They are an abomination. Thanos tilts his head. They are inevitable. Pick turns sharply. There is nothing inevitable about tyranny. Thanos meets his gaze evenly. On the contrary, Captain Tyranny is often born from the desire to eliminate suffering. The words linger, unsettlingly logical. Suddenly, the ship shudders violently as they drop from warp. Picard commands. On screen, a Borg cube, massive and foreboding, illuminated by eerie green lights. But something is different. The cube is not advancing. It is waiting. A transmission pierces through all frequencies, without invitation. We are the Borg. The familiar monotone reverberates through the bridge. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Then, a pause. But one among you possesses superior evolutionary efficiency. Every eye turns to Thanos. The collective continues. Thanos of Titan. Your survival probability exceeds 99.9% under extreme environmental stress. Your cognitive capacity demonstrates advanced strategic pattern recognition. Your physiology is optimal. A flicker of interest crosses Thanos' face. They admire strength, he murmurs. Picard steps forward. You will not take anyone from this ship. The Borg voice shifts. We do not seek assimilation. We seek integration. On screen, a section of the cube opens. A figure emerges, a drone unlike the others. Taller, reinforced plating. Adaptive nanotechnology visibly shifting across its exoskeleton. Data scans rapidly. Captain, the Borg have altered their nanoprobes to interface with Thanos' unique cellular structure. They are attempting to create a compatible template. Riker's voice drops. They're building a version of him. Thanos' eyes narrow. For the first time, he says softly, I encounter beings who understand the value of evolution. Picard turns sharply. You cannot be considering this. Thanos does not answer immediately. Inside the cube, drones rearrange themselves with mechanical precision. A holographic projection of Thanos' physiology rotates in mid-naprobes, studying every molecular detail gleaned from long-range scans and residual energy from his earlier stabilization. Of the anomaly, the green subspace pulse intensifies. The Borg speak again. Integration of Thanos' genetic and cognitive framework will result in optimized balance. Resistance will become obsolete. The cube powers weapons. Worf shouts, they are targeting us. Picard grips the armrests of his chair. Shields up. Prepare evasive maneuvers. The first Borg beam strikes, not at the Enterprise, but at Thanos. A concentrated tractor beam locks onto him, attempting to transport him directly into the cube. Thanos does not resist at first. Energy wraps around his body. Nanoprobes firing through the beam. On the bridge, Troy gasps. They're penetrating his cellular defenses. Thanos grimaces slightly, the first sign of discomfort. Within his bloodstream, Borg nanoprobes attempt assimilation. But his cells respond violently, adapting, rejecting, crushing the foreign technology with immense biological resilience. Inside the cube, alarms blare, nanoprobes failing, adaptive countermeasures, ineffective. The collective recalibrates, instantly. They increase the beam's power. Thanos roars, not in pain, but in challenge. With a surge of raw strength, he tears free of the tractor beam and hurls himself toward the cube at impossible speed. He crashes through its hull like a meteor dot on the Enterprise view screen. The cube trembles. Inside, corridors collapse as Thanos moves through drones effortlessly, ripping through mechanical limbs and severing neural connections. But for every drone destroyed, 2 more adapt. Nanoprobes shift composition mid-combat. Energy shields fluctuate frequency in microseconds. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Thanos encounters something relentless. He crushes a drone and watches as its components reassemble partially before shutting down. He pauses. They do not fear death, he whispers. The collective voice surrounds him internally now. You seek balance through random elimination. We seek balance through unity. Images flood his mind, billions of voices speaking as one. No hunger, no war, no dissent, no choice. Thanos hesitates. What if this is a more efficient solution? What if the Borg are what he once envisioned, balance enforced through inevitability? On the Enterprise, Data's voice reaches urgently. Captain, the Borg are attempting to integrate Thanos' neural patterns into the collective via direct interface. If successful, they will gain his strategic cognition. Picard's face hardens. We cannot allow that. Riker swallows. How do we stop it? Picard looks at the cube, at the faint green pulse now resonating from within it. The anomaly. Energy, he says slowly. It's reacting to their attempt to assimilate him. Inside the cube, Thanos grips a drone's head and pauses mid-crush. The green light pulses through the walls, not Borg green, but deeper. Older dot, something beyond the collective dot, something watching. The Borg voice falters briefly. Unknown variable. Detected. Thanos senses it too. Not the Infinity Stones, not cosmic energy he recognizes, but something ancient and sentient within. Subspace awakened by the merging of his power and the collective's ambition. The walls of the cube begin to warped-out drones twitched erratically. The green pulse turns darker, almost emerald black. The Borg speak, fragmented now. Balance recalibrating. External consciousness intrusion. Thanos steps back as reality within the cube ripples like liquid. On the Enterprise, space around the cube fractures subtly. Picard whispers, "What have they done inside the cube?" Thanos looks upward as the ceiling tears open into swirling subspace, a vast, incomprehensible presence staring back. For the first time in decades, Thanos feels uncertainty, and the Borg, who claim perfection, feel fear. What if the true guardian of this universe was not the Federation, not the Borg, but something older than both, and it had just judged Thanos unworthy? What if the green pulse wasn't a weapon or an anomaly, but a consciousness that had silently protected this galaxy for eons? And what if, by trying to assimilate Thanos, the Borg had awakened a force that saw both them and the Titan as threats to cosmic equilibrium? Inside the Borg cube, gravity shifts violently. Metallic corridors twist like living tissue. Drones freeze mid-step, their ocular implants flickering erratically. Thanos steadies himself as the walls dissolve into shimmering subspace energy. The cube is no longer a structure. It is suspended inside a vast emerald void. A voice resonates. Not mechanical, not singular, but ancient. You are not of this continuum. The words echo through matter and mind simultaneously. Thanos stands tall, unflinching. Then this continuum should not have summoned me. On the Enterprise bridge, every console erupts with cascading data. Data's golden eyes widen slightly. Captain, the Borg cube is partially phased into subspace. I am detecting energy signatures consistent with the Bajoran wormhole. Riker looks up sharply. The prophets? Picard's expression darkens. The entity speaks again, now audible, faintly even through Starfleet sensors. You seek balance through erasure. This is not linear harmony. Thanos' jaw tightens. A restored equilibrium to a dying universe. Correction. The presence responds. You imposed silence. Around him, images flood the void. Civilizations flourishing without reduction. Species learning, cooperation. Timelines branching through diplomacy rather than annihilation. The prophets, the non-linear beings who exist within and beyond time, are not arguing. They are demonstrating. On Deep Space Nine, Commander Benjamin Sisko suddenly stiffens as the wormhole flares brilliantly emerald. Op stations tremble, Major Sisko says urgently. The prophets are agitated. Kira Nerys looks at the wormhole, unsettled. That's never a good sign. Back within the distorted cube, Thanos' eyes narrow. You judge me by your abundance, he says. In my universe, abundance was illusion. Linear beings often misinterpret scarcity. The prophets reply. Conflict does not necessitate extinction. The Borg drones begin convulsing as their hive mind fractures under the psychic pressure. We are the Borg, the collective insists weakly, but their unified voice stutters. The prophets address them coldly. You are imbalanced through assimilation. Then, to Thanos, and you are imbalanced through subtraction. The void compresses suddenly, forcing Thanos to one knee, not through physical force, but temporal displacement. He experiences flashes of alternate outcomes, a Titan, where his proposal was accepted, where resources were rationed peacefully, a universe where the Avengers convinced him to seek restoration rather than elimination, a timeline where he never touched touched the stones, he growls, pushing against the visions. Possibilities are irrelevant, he roars. Reality demands action. The emerald light intensifies, forming a vague silhouette neither humanoid nor abstract, but something incomprehensibly vast. Action without understanding creates paradox. On the Enterprise, Troy gasps softly. They're not attacking him. They're confronting him. Picard watches the distortion with grave realization. They exist outside time. To them, Thanos is a ripple. Inside the cube, which is barely recognizable now, the Borg attempt one final recalibration. Integration of non-linear entities will increase efficiency. A beam of cutting-edge assimilation energy fires toward the emerald presence. It dissolves instantly. The Prophet's response is immediate. Time fractures inside the cube. Drones age centuries in seconds, then revert. Metal corrodes, then reforms. Thanos shields himself from temporal flux, muscles straining against forces that do not obey conventional physics. "You would erase me," he demands. "We do not erase." The Prophets respond. "We correct." The green void tightens around him, not crushing, but isolating. On Deep Space Nine, the wormhole expands unnaturally. Sisko steps closer to the viewport, feeling something familiar yet distorted. "They're deciding," he whispers. Back inside the shifting cube, Thanos stands defiant. "If you seek balance, then test me fairly." A long pause follows. "Then, you wish trial." Suddenly, Thanos vanishes. The cube collapses back into normal space, damaged but intact. The Borg drones stand motionless, disconnected from the collective. On the Enterprise bridge, Worf stares at the viewscreen. The cube's power signatures have stabilized. Data frowns slightly. Thanos is no longer aboard. Picard grips his chair. Where is he? Across the quadrant, within the Bajoran wormhole, time ceases to flow linearly. Thanos finds himself standing upon an endless crystalline plane, suspended among stars that flicker like thoughts. Before him appears a figure, shifting between forms. A child, an elder, a warrior, a star. "You will observe," the Prophets declare. Images manifest around him. The Borg spreading with his tactical genius, integrated Federation worlds falling not through destruction, but forced assimilation of his ideology. Romulan fleets uniting under fear of his presence. And the a darker future. The Prophets withdrawing. The wormhole collapsing permanently. Chaos spreading because a singular external force altered the natural evolution of this galaxy. Thanos watches in silence. "You destabilize without intending conquest," they say. He clenches his fists. "In my universe, I was destiny. In this one," the Prophets reply, "you are disruption." The crystalline plane fractures beneath his feet. "You may remain," they continue, "or you may be returned." Returned to a universe where the stones are gone, where his mission is complete, but hollow, or remain here, and risk unraveling a cosmos that has not chosen him. For the first time, Thanos hesitates, not from doubt in his ideology, but from uncertainty about his place. "Why grant me choice?" he asks. The Prophets' forms shimmer, because balance without choice is tyranny. The words strike harder than any weapon. Far beyond the wormhole, Borg vessels power down temporarily. Romulan intelligence scrambles to analyze the anomaly. And on the Enterprise, Picard waits, knowing that whatever decision Thanos makes next could define the fate of the quadrant. Within the timeless void, Thanos looks out at infinite possibilities. Stay, leave, or change. His next move will not involve stones, it will involve belief. And somewhere deep within the void, a faint shadow stirs something not of Prophet origin, not Borg, not Federation. Something that has watched this entire exchange, and smiles. What if the Prophets offered Thanos a choice, but something else made the decision for him? What if, in the space between staying and leaving, a third force reached into the wormhole, not to judge, not to correct, but to claim? And if Thanos was no longer merely a disruption in this universe, what if he was becoming its catalyst? The crystalline plane beneath Thanos' feet trembles, not from the Prophet's will, but from intrusion. The emerald light flickers. For the first time since he entered the wormhole, the Prophet's presence feels divided. "You are not alone," they say, "not to Thanos, but to something beyond." A ripple spreads through the timeless void, darker than the surrounding green. Not chaotic like Borg interference, not structured like Federation logic. Ancient, predatory. Thanos straightens slowly. "I felt you earlier," he says quietly. "When I stabilized the rupture." The darkness condenses into a distortion, not a body, not a face, but a gravitational absence in the fabric of subspace itself. On Deep Space Nine, the wormhole pulses violently. Consoles explode in showers of sparks. Commander Kira shouts. Energy readings are off the charts. Sisko grips the railing, eyes fixed on the swirling anomaly. He feels it, not like the Prophet's. This presence is heavier, hungrier. Within the wormhole, the Prophet's voices echo, less unified now. "This entity does not belong to our continuum." Thanos narrows his eyes. "Neither do I." The darkness answers at last, not in words, but in sensation. Thanos feels it brush against his mind like a cold tide. It has no moral judgment, no philosophy, no concept of balance, only expansion. The Prophets flare brightly, pushing back. "You are entropy unbound," they declare. The darkness ripples in response, almost amused. Suddenly, Thanos is struck by a vision not granted by the Prophets. He sees a galaxy long before the Federation, the stars collapsing prematurely, civilizations vanishing without war or plague, entire sectors dimming not from consumption, but from silent erasure. This force does not seek balance. It feeds on cosmic structure itself, and Thanos realizes something chilling. When the Infinity Stones were destroyed in his universe, their fundamental energies did not vanish, they dispersed. Fragments of primordial force leaking into adjacent realities. This entity may have followed that trail. "You were drawn to me," Thanos murmurs. The darkness pulses in affirmation. The Prophets shift their focus sharply. "You are anchor," they say to Thanos. "Your arrival weakened boundary." On the Enterprise bridge, Data turns from his console. Cut in the wormhole's subspace matrix is destabilizing. If it collapses, it could permanently sever the Gamma Quadrant. Picard's face hardens, and if it expands, Data hesitates. It could cascade through neighboring sectors. Back in the wormhole, the darkness lashes outward, tendrils of gravitational distortions slicing through the crystalline plane. The Prophet's light fractures. For the first time, they are not in control. Thanos plants his feet firmly. "You would consume this universe as you consumed mine's residual energy," he growls. The entity responds by tightening its pull on him specifically. He feels it, not assimilation like the Borg, not temporal judgment like the Prophets. Extraction. It seeks the echo of infinity energy still embedded within his being. The power he once wielded left scars, cosmic fingerprints in his cells. And this force is harvesting them. The Prophets attempt containment, but their non-linear existence struggles against something that does not obey temporal logic. "You must depart," they insist. Thanos laughs once, short and bitter. "You send me back to what? A universe where my purpose is complete." The darkness tightens. Pain sears through him, deeper than physical. It pulls at memory, at identity. Visions flash violently. The snap, Gamora's fall, Tony Stark's defiance, his final moments before this displacement. He roars, resisting the extraction. "You will not use me again." Outside the wormhole, space warps. Borg cubes resume movement, sensing instability. Romulan fleets detect gravitational anomalies spreading toward their borders. On Deep Space Nine, Sisko suddenly gasps as the Prophets speak through him. The linear one is key. Kira stares at him. What are they saying? "They can't stop it alone," Sisko whispers. "He has to choose." Inside the void, Thanos drops to one knee as the darkness nearly tears the residual cosmic energy from him. The Prophets dim. "You seek balance," they say faintly. "Now enact it." He looks up at them through strain and fury. "Balance," he mutters. "Not through slaughter, not through silence, but through opposition." Slowly, deliberately, Thanos stops resisting the pull. Instead, he channels it. He focuses the residual infinity energy within him, not to destroy, not to dominate, but to create friction. The darkness pulls harder, and he pushes back equally. His stalemate forms, two primordial forces locked in equilibrium. He's countering it. Inside the void, Thanos stands fully now, muscles trembling, veins glowing faintly with cosmic remnants. "You want what remains of the stones?" he snarls at the entity. "Then you will face what wielded them." The darkness slashes violently, but cannot advance. The Prophet's light surrounds both forces. For the first time, they declare, imbalance meets resistance without erasure. The struggle sends shockwaves through subspace, but the expansion halts. The darkness recoils slightly, reassessing. Thanos breathes heavily, yet he does not falter. A different motivation, but effective. The entity begins to withdraw, its form dispersing like smoke into deeper subspace layers. You have delayed entropy, they say. Thanos looks toward the fading darkness. Delayed, he repeats. The wormholes. Cisco exhales slowly. It's not over. Within the timeless void, the prophets turn to Thanos. You must now decide. Stay as guardian against the spreading entropy you attracted. For the first time, his purpose is not defined by conquest or calculation. It is undefined, and that uncertainty is heavier than any gauntlet he ever wore. He takes a step forward. The wormhole flares brilliantly once more, and across the quadrant, every major power feels it. The Titan is about to choose. What if Thanos chose to stay? And if he remained, would the Federation ever truly trust him? Or would his presence slowly reshape the very ideals Starfleet was built upon? Deep Space Nine trembles once more, but this time, it does not feel like collapse. It feels like return. On the promenade, civilians stare through the viewport as a massive silhouette emerges from the wormhole's glow. Thanos. He drifts outward slowly, armor scarred from temporal strain, eyes steady and contemplative. On the Enterprise bridge, Data's voice cuts through the silence. Captain, Thanos has exited the wormhole. The anomaly's signatures have reduced significantly. Picard stands tall, staring at the viewscreen. He chose, Picard murmurs. Moments later, Thanos stands once again aboard the Enterprise, transported directly to the bridge. Security teams tense instinctively, phasers raised. Thanos shakes his head slightly. No. A ripple of unease moves through the bridge. It cannot be destroyed. He continues. It is entropy given direction. It fed on the residue of my universe's collapse. And it will seek more. Then why stay? Riker asks sharply. You feel responsible. I feel aware, Thanos replies. Responsibility is irrelevant. Across the quadrant, subspace distortions ripple faintly, tiny gravitational irregularities in distant sectors. Harmless for now. Seeds. Data works rapidly. Captain, long-range sensors detect minor subspace compression events along the former Borg transit corridors. Picard frowns. The fragmented left behind. Thanos nods once. On Deep Space Nine, Cisco watches the wormhole settle. The prophets let him stay. Kira says quietly. Cisco nods. They didn't choose him. He chose them. Admiral Nechiev's holographic image materializes on the bridge. Captain Picard, she says sharply. Reports indicate the Titan remains in your custody. Picard stands firm. He does. And he has prevented a multiversal threat from spreading. Thanos steps forward, uninvited but composed. You misunderstand? He says evenly. I am not your enemy. A flicker crosses Thanos' expression. Not anger. Memory. In my universe, he says quietly. They called me mad. The bridge remains silent. And yet, he continues, I was the only one willing to act. Picard's voice cuts through with measured force. Acting without moral foundation is tyranny. Thanos turns to him slowly. And moral foundation without decisive action is extinction. The Enterprise shifts to intercept course. Thanos watches the tactical display carefully. They will attempt integration again, he says. This time, not of me. On screen, the Borg cube drops from warp, massive, relentless. But something is different. Its surface glows faintly with unfamiliar energy, dark gravitational distortions along its hull. Data's voice tightens. They are adapting it, Picard whispers, almost to himself. If they integrate that force, the cube fires not assimilation beams, but focused gravitational pulses. Space itself compresses along the Enterprise's shields. The ship shudders violently. Shields at 82%. Worf reports, I do not intend to fight alone. Picard studies him, seeing not a conqueror, but a strategist, recalibrating purpose. He nods once. Make it so. In a flash of light, Thanos vanishes from the bridge. Moments later, he materializes within the Borg cube once more, but this time, he does not charge forward. He walks. Drones part slightly, scanning him with recalibrated optics. We are the Borg, the collective instance. You will assist in evolutionary convergence. Thanos' eyes glow faintly with residual cosmic energy. You misunderstand evolution, he says quietly. Behind him, a Starfleet strike team beams in, led by Commander Datia. The Borg hesitate, recalculating. Data turns to Thanos. Your previous engagement demonstrated resistance parameters beyond our predictive models. Thanos glances at him. You adapt quickly. Data nods. It is efficient. For the first time, Thanos almost smirks. Then let us demonstrate adaptation together. The Borg activate gravitational nodes along the cube's core, channeling the entropy fragment. The walls begin to distort. Drones fuse partially with the dark energy, becoming something new, less mechanical, more unstable. Thanos steps forward into the distortion. Now, he says to Data. Data interfaces with the cube's systems, injecting Federation algorithms designed for harmonic stabilization, not destruction. The entropy pulses violently against Thanos' resistance and Data's logic matrices. For a moment, the cube trembles on the brink of implosion. And outside, the Enterprise holds position, shields buckling under gravitational assault. Picard watches anxiously. Come on, he murmurs. Inside the cube, Thanos roars as he forces the entropy fragment inward, compressing it into a containment node, not eliminating it, but trapping it within a stabilized field generated by Starfleet code and his own cosmic remnants. The Borg collective stutters. System instability, recalibration, inefficiency detected. The entropy pulse weakens. The cube's gravitational weapons power down. Silence. Data steps back from the interface. It is contained, he states. Thanos breathes heavily, but stands upright. For now, he says. Outside, the Borg cube goes dark. The Enterprise's shields stabilize. On the bridge, Picard exhales deeply, but long-range sensors detect something unsettling. Data's voice transmits from within the cube. Captain, while containment is successful, the entropy fragment has altered Borg network protocols. Picard's expression hardens. In what way? Data pauses. They are no longer seeking assimilation alone. Thanos looks toward the cube's core, where faint dark energy still pulses. They have learned patience, he says quietly. And in distant sectors of space, subtle gravitational distortions begin appearing simultaneously. Not attacks, probes. The war has not begun with destruction. It has begun with adaptation. And this time, the Borg are not the only ones evolving. What if the greatest threat wasn't the entropy fragment, but what it was teaching the Borg? What if, by containing it instead of destroying it, Thanos had given the collective exactly what they needed, not power, but perspective? And if the Borg began to understand patience, strategy, even restraint, would that make them unstoppable? The Borg cube hangs in Federation space, dark and silent, its once relentless green glow reduced to faint pulses deep within its core. Starfleet vessels encircle it at a cautious distance. No weapons fire, no assimilation beams, just waiting. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watches the tactical display. They're not retreating, Riker says quietly. No, Picard replies. They're thinking. Inside the cube, the atmosphere feels different. Not chaotic, not aggressive, focused. Thanos stands before the containment node, a spherical field of Federation. Harmonic algorithms interlaced with faint cosmic energy from his own altered physiology. Within it, the entropy fragment coils like smoke trapped in glass. Data steps beside him, eyes scanning constantly. The collective is reorganizing its internal network. Data reports. Subroutines previously dedicated to rapid assimilation are being reallocated to what Riker's voice crackles through the com. Data pauses. Observation. Thanos' jaw tightens slightly. They're studying limitation, he says. The Borg voice echoes through the chamber. Smoother now. Less urgent. We have encountered inefficiencies in immediate consumption. We will adapt. Thanos turns slowly toward the nearest drone. You have tasted something beyond biology and technology, he says. You cannot assimilate entropy. You can only endure it. The drone's ocular implant flickers. Endurance increases long-term survival probability. On the Enterprise, Troy closes her eyes briefly. They're not angry, she whispers. They're enlightened. Picard looks at her sharply. Enlightened. They've experienced vulnerability, she says, and instead of rejecting it, they're integrating it. That realization settles heavily. Back in the cube, the drones step backward in unison, forming a wide circle around Thanos and Data. We will withdraw, the collective announces. Temporal recalibration required. Thanos narrows his eyes. You concede. Negative. We evolved. The containment node dims as the cube's engines hum to life. On the Enterprise bridge, Worf growls. They are retreating. Picard studies the readings carefully. Track them. As the cube turns toward deep space, subtle distortions ripple behind it. Not destructive waves, but faint calibrations of subspace itself. Data's voice comes through again. Captain, the Borg have altered their propulsion signature. It is more efficient by approximately 12.7%. Riker exhales slowly. They learned from it. Thanos watches the cube depart through a viewport breach in the hull. They will not return immediately, he says. Picard opens a channel directly to him. That sounds less like reassurance and more like warning. It is both, Thanos replies. Moments later, he and Data beam back to the Enterprise. The bridge feels heavier now, not from imminent attack, but from uncertain quiet. Picard approaches Thanos. "You prevented catastrophe," Picard says evenly. "But he also accelerated Borg evolution." Thanos meets his gaze without defensiveness. "Yes. Then how is this victory?" Thanos looks out at the stars. "In my universe, I force balance through subtraction. Here, I may have forced growth through resistance." Riker crosses his arms. "That doesn't sound better." "No," Thanos agrees. "It sounds inevitable." An alert interrupts them. "Captain," Data says, returning to his station. "Multiple minor subspace compressions detected across former Borg territories. They are constructing something." Picard's brow furrows. "Another cube." "Negative," Data replies. "The signatures are distributed, networked." On the main screen, holographic projections appear. Dozens of small gravitational nodes forming a vast geometric pattern across light years. Thanos steps closer, studying it carefully. "They are building a lattice," he says quietly. "A lattice for what?" Riker demands. "To map entropy." Silence. Troy looks unsettled. "They're not trying to control it. They're trying to understand its boundaries." Thanos nods slowly. "The Borg no longer seek to dominate through force alone. They will chart the limits of existence itself. And once they know those limits, they'll push them." Picard finishes grimly. Across the quadrant, Romulan intelligence detects similar readings. Klingon warships mobilize defensively. The Dominion, deep in the Gamma Quadrant, begins silent surveillance. Every major power senses the shift. The Borg are no longer charging blindly. They are preparing. And at the center of it all stands Thanos. Starfleet Command transmits again. Admiral Nechayev appears, expression severe. "Captain Picard, the Council is divided. Some believe the Titan must be detained permanently. Others argue his presence is essential." Picard glances at Thanos briefly. "And you, Admiral?" She hesitates. "I believe we cannot afford ignorance." The transmission ends. Thanos turns to Picard. "You fear what I represent." "Yes," Picard answers honestly. "And yet you still allow me to stand here." Picard's voice softens slightly. "Because this universe is not built on fear of what might happen. It's built on confronting it." Thanos studies him carefully. "In another reality," he says quietly, "a man once told me, we do not trade lives." Picard's eyes flicker with understanding, though he does not know the reference. "And we still do not," Picard says. A long pause follows. Then, unexpectedly, Thanos speaks again, not as conqueror, not as strategist. "But what if balance does not require loss?" he asks softly. The bridge falls silent. It is not a challenge. It is a question. Data looks at him. "That would require systemic cooperation across all major powers," Data says. "Statistical likelihood is low." Thanos almost smiles faintly. "So was my arrival here." Suddenly, sensors flare again. "Captain," Worf calls out, a new gravitational distortion forming at the edge of Federation space. On screen, a dark sphere pulses faintly, not Borg, not wormhole, another entropy fragment. Thanos' expression hardens. "It spreads," he says. Picard rises from his chair. "Then we face it, together." The Enterprise pivots toward the new distortion. Behind them, the Borg lattice continues, expanding silently. In the wormhole, the prophets observe without interference, and somewhere deep in subspace, the greater entropy presence stirs once more curious. The Titan did not leave. He did not conquer. He adapted. And now, the entire galaxy must decide whether to do the same, because the next fragment forming in the darkness is larger. What if Thanos' presence became the linchpin for an entire galaxy's survival, or its downfall? What if the fragments of entropy now spreading through Federation space were only the beginning, and only the Titan who once brought death could turn them into balance? And if he failed, would the entire quadrant collapse under forces beyond comprehension? A darkness no Starfleet fleet, no Klingon Ahmadan number Romulan warbird could halt. The Enterprise approaches the newly detected entropy distortion at maximum warp. Stars stretch into brilliant streaks across the viewscreen. The ship vibrates slightly as subspace readings spike into red. On the bridge, Picard steadies himself. The status, he commands. Data responds quickly. Captain, the distortion is growing exponentially. Its gravitational signature is unlike anything previously recorded. If left unchecked, it could destabilize the core sectors of this quadrant. Worf growls. Weapons cannot touch it. Riker leans forward, tension evident. Then what can? Thanos stands at the observation deck, silent, eyes fixed on the pulsing darkness. He breathes slowly. Containment failed because this is not a fragment of destruction alone, he says. It is learning, adapting, like the Borg, but raw, pure, entropy-seeking form. Troy shivers slightly. It's aware. It knows we're here. Yes, Thanos murmurs, and it tests everything that touches it. Data tilts his head, then strategic intervention is required. Calculated, not forceful. Thanos steps toward the bridge center. I will enter it, he declares. Picard's voice is sharp. That is madness. You cannot survive, not even with your abilities. Thanos meets his gaze evenly. Perhaps. But I am the only one capable of negotiating with it. Riker swallows, gripping his chair. Negotiating with entropy. Great idea. Thanos ignores him. I do not seek to fight. I seek to teach its structure, to impose understanding without violence. The bridge falls silent. Picard exhales slowly. Make it so, he says. But take a full tactical team. Thanos nods, stepping onto the transporter pad. He glances back once at the crew. This galaxy has hope, he says quietly. Do not waste it. Transporter beams flare. In seconds, Thanos materializes within the core of the dark distortion. Reality bends around him. Subspace pulses violently. Space and time ripple in impossible patterns. He feels the fragment brushing against his consciousness. Cold, vast, hungry. It probes him, testing limits, seeking weaknesses. But Thanos does not falter. He raises a hand and extends the residual cosmic energy within him. Remnants of the Infinity Stone's energy still embedded in his physiology. Not to destroy, not to dominate, to communicate. The entropy recoils, twisting like liquid darkness. It senses intelligence, calculation, and intent. For the first time, it hesitates. You are not like the others. It resonates in thought. You carry structure, yet you are chaos. I am balance, Thanos replies. I understand extremes, and the middle. He gestures slowly, guiding the energy through his aura, shaping it like a lattice of force and understanding. The fragment shifts with him, learning to bend without tearing, to exist without consuming. On the Enterprise bridge, sensors spike. Captain, data says, the distortion's growth rate is slowing. Picard exhales. He's containing it. But containment is not enough. The fragment thrashes violently, testing its boundaries. Its force lashes out in waves that distort subspace, shaking nearby star systems. Thanos grits his teeth, channeling every ounce of energy. Memories flash. Gamora, the snap, the countless worlds sacrificed. Not for conquest, not for vengeance, for perspective, experience. He places himself fully at the center, absorbing and redirecting the fragment's pulses, shaping the raw entropy into a stable but contained network. Slowly, wave by wave, it stops thrashing. It stabilizes. A pulse of green light bursts outward. The fragment no longer seeks chaos. It is aligned, structured, restrained, balanced. Inside the fragment, Thanos' mind touches its essence. You will not consume without reason, he commands. You will learn. You will measure. You will respect life and structure alike. Silence. Then, comprehension. The fragment still hums with raw energy, but it obeys. Not as a slave, not as a tool. As a force guided by intent. Back on the Enterprise, long-range sensors show the distortion diminishing into faint residual energy, harmless and dormant. Picard exhales deeply. It is done. Thanos appears on the transporter pad moments later, armor scorched, body trembling slightly. He steps forward, shoulders heavy with the burden of what he has contained. Riker approaches first. You did it. You actually did it. Thanos doesn't answer immediately. He walks to the observation deck and stares out at the stars. "Balance is fragile," he murmurs, "and it requires vigilance." Troy studies him carefully. "And yet you chose to stay." "Yes," he replies, "because this universe is alive, and it deserves a chance." Picard approaches, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You may have saved billions, but trust is earned in this galaxy, not given." Thanos turns slightly, a faint shadow of a smile crossing his face. "Then I will earn it, in time." From afar, the Prophet's light flickers gently, a silent acknowledgement of a new guardian. The Borg, meanwhile, retreat into the void, carrying lessons they do not yet fully understand. The fragment remains dormant, but it watches, ready to test, ready to grow, and across the stars, every major power now senses the presence of a Titan unlike any other, not a conqueror, not a destroyer, but a force that defines balance beyond the final frontier. Thanos steps into the corridor, flanked by a Starfleet strike team. His voice resonates quietly, as though to himself, "I came to judge this universe, and found it worth saving." Picard turns to Data and Riker, eyes on the Titan. "It seems we are all in uncharted territory now." Riker nods slowly. "Yeah, and I don't think we've seen the last of it." The camera pans outward. The Enterprise glides past distant stars, calm now, yet the shadows of subspace stir faintly. Somewhere deep, the entropy fragment pulses, waiting for its next lesson. And Thanos stands at the threshold of this universe, no longer an invader, but the balance it never knew it needed. The stars shine, fragile and eternal, as the galaxy braces for a future shaped by one Titan's choice. The end.